Good afternoon, fellow citizens. Welcome to the Citizens Chat Show. My name is Masesa Demiano, and I welcome you to this episode that, of course, that has been faced with a lot of challenges within our country. We've lost lives of our fellow Ugandans. We have injuries all over, and of course, the tensions are too high in the country. And of course, it is from this that we will have to have our conversation, of course, on the worrying terror threats in the country, but also importantly, we need to talk about also the increasing prices of commodities in the country, maybe which way for our country. Joined on the panel, and of course today, I'm joined by capable people who are going to take us through this conversation. And of course, we lost about 7 people, and 4 of those are our fellow Ugandans, and the 3 are terrorists, and I think we'll need to condole with the families of those deceased. On the panel, I'm joined by Sarah Bireete, the Executive Director with the Center for Constitutional Governance, and of course, a regular panelist. Sarah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And followed by Dr. Robert Ojambo, is the head of History and Political Sciences at Kyambogo University. Doctor, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and of course, retired Major Awich Pollar is the Director of External Services with NRM. Afande, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And finally, and our usual panelist also is Joseph Ochieno, the Ideologue, UPC Ideologue, and of course the UPC leadership contender. So we need to have this conversation, ladies and gentlemen, and possibly I need to give us, each one of us will have a take on this. We need to understand what are the thoughts, our own thoughts on the ongoing terror attacks in Uganda, and possibly are we safe? I need to possibly start with Sarah.
Why did you start with the state?
With the state.
Why not
Okay.
the professor? Okay. Viewers, thank you so much. My take on the terror, what did you frame it?
Yeah, with our take on thoughts on ongoing terror attacks, and whether we are really safe as a
Of
people.
course, I start by sending my condolence to the families of those who lost their dear ones. But I would like to say right from the word go that terrorism is not acceptable. It's one thing which is outlawed internationally. People have many rights, including a right to self-determination, which is basically struggling for your independence. But even this, when the UDR, Universal Declaration, accepts a right to self-determination, it prohibits a terror approach. Because terrorism, as defined in many jurisdictions and international laws, is really a bad method of achieving an objective. It doesn't discriminate, it attacks and it gives fear to everybody. Remember that we have freedom from fear. And of course, life, takes life. So we should know that it's condemned and it is wrong. So I wouldn't expect anybody to celebrate whoever chooses to use that method of achieving an objective. Well, having said that, I would also think that to every problem there's a solution. Even HIV/AIDS is just that our mind has not clicked the right knob. So being faced with what it is as a terror method of achieving an end, it would now call upon all of us to look for the cause. Why? Because if we look for the cause, it is a means to getting a solution to it. So we just don't have to fall our arms, especially when we know that to every problem there's a solution. Only that our intellect has not clocked it. But to get to that solution, you need to look at the cause. So I think it is high time we think about it and address it once for all. The address and the approach might be multi-approach, but we need a solution to it. So that's my take on it.
Interesting. Then I need to also invite in Joseph. What's your thoughts? Are we safe as citizens?
I think most importantly, from my own perspective, as someone who's never fought since I was born, and the young people watching this ought to know, I have never fought since I was born, but I'm an absolutely fine and perfect, responsible gentleman, meaning therefore violence in any form by and large, should be denounced. Number two, I also speak as UPC and as a representative of the political party that has been in power twice in government with the mandate of the people, democratic mandate of the people. I am saying that there is no political grievance, as Paul is saying, or no grievance which ideally should not be resolved on the table. That is, if there is space and opportunity for it to be resolved. And I hope that this state, amidst all this, does take that. But beyond all that, I also want to say that having been in government, particularly second time, and experienced terrorism, I know what it is. And so our sincere condolences, and indeed my own sincere condolences to the families of bereaved, those people who are injured, and anything that we can do as a country to avoid violence must be done together. I think this is the time for the country to come together. I was on a particular online forum discussion the other day, and I was trying to suggest lines of possibilities at these times when leadership emerges, starting from State House, where we come in to talk as a country, we come in not to politicize issues, we come in to recognize that there is an issue that should be able to bring us together. And then instead, I see certain people from certain circles who want not only to politicize, but to personalize and perhaps patronize Ugandans. I think that should be rejected. So, are we safe? NRA exercised terror, and they used terror to enter State House. It's a very inconveniencing situation, particularly for Kampala, where you don't know whether you should comfortably go to a supermarket or perhaps even enter church. So it is very difficult, and like Awich is saying, terrorists will tend to go for soft targets. This time they were rather daring going to CPS of all places. But you realize that people were killed, they're not people who had cocked guns. They're basically citizens, including police officers, who are basically our law enforcement officers. And so it's something that should not only be condemned, but as a matter of reality, I hope that, I understand Mr. Museveni today may be coming up with a statement. I hope this is an opportunity for him to open up a new conversation where Ugandans are able to begin to have an open dialogue on issues, so that grievances, if this is a local, particular domestic terrorism, that Ugandans are not squeezed to the extremes, but Ugandans have an opportunity to be able to have a conversation, so that even people who might have sufficient ground, so they think, to pick up, stones to throw, should be encouraged and perhaps many times persuaded to come round table, so that we use common sense to prevail rather than anything else that threatens the lives and properties of Ugandans.
Interesting one. Choose common sense. I want to bring in possibly a doctor. You're a person of political science and you have good grounding on it. So what is your thoughts on such incidences happening around the country?
Yeah, thank you so much, Damian, and surrounded by experts who are practitioners. When you are introducing them here, I was dwarfed, and but I will try to struggle out of the waters. Maybe I'll first begin by looking at terror historically. Terror has been part of history. If you read history, you find that there has always been terror, and unfortunately, it is that terror that has been documented. You don't find very nice things which happened in the ancient times being documented, but wherever terror happened, there is a lot of document on it. Because, for example, for those who studied history, you only learn about the French when it came to the French Revolution, a terrific time. I will base my discussion on Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes was a British philosopher, and this man, they say that his mother received the labor pains because of fear, and this was fear that was created when Prussia attacked England. So when Thomas Hobbes came to start writing, he tried to look at the nature of man, and he said, man is barbaric. Man is a barbaric thing. And for that matter, that man needs some sovereign. And the sovereign is to make sure that he does not terrorize fellow men. So that's where we come in. Am I trying to say that we don't have the sovereign in Uganda? We do. But whenever terror happens among society, basing on Thomas Hobbes' view, it means that the sovereign has somehow failed. Who puts there the sovereign? According to Thomas Hobbes, the sovereign comes out of the social contract, where an individual or individuals come together and say they cede their rights to the sovereign, and in return they want protection and make sure that there is no anarchy. I will use the word anarchy. So in Uganda, for some time, that's what we have been struggling to achieve from the time we got independence. I think the first very reasonable revolution in Uganda was in 1945 among the Bataka. And that was a very terrific time in Uganda. I was trying to check, about 8 people were recorded to have died. And eight individuals. Okay. And the British had to put a commission to find out why 8 people had died during that time. These are colonialists. Mm-hmm. So from that time, I've been having a lot of problems up to 1986. Then we got into the regime that we are in. And the basic principle of this regime has been peace, unity, and development. I still remember that's the summary of the 10-point program. So when that thing happened on Monday, I think people thought so many things. But remember, we have been having a lot of problems. We have been demonstrations, people being terrified here by different groups. For example, I'll just give you an example. One time, there was an election, and there was a rally in Masaka, one of those constituencies in Masaka. And during the rally, some men just emerged from a taxi, public transport taxi, this PSV, and started beating up people. And I remember the IGP then, General Kaihura, was asked, who are these people who are beating up people? And he said,
the Chiboko squad.
Yes, he said, I don't know. So that created a very big problem. I said, if the IGP does not know, who then knows? Then it goes back to where it started from. Who are these people now terrorizing the city? We must ask that question. That is where we should begin from. Who are these people who are terrorizing the city with bomb blasts and bomb scares? After we have known them, then we ask the second question, why? After we answer the question why, then we have to argue or discuss how do we come out of this. So I think those are my 3 questions that Ugandans need to ask. I want to take this opportunity to give condolences to those who lost our dear citizens. When my colleague here was saying, said we lost 4. The rest were terrorists. Yeah. Now, does it mean that terrorists are not Ugandans? Yeah. At least from the information I got from a tweet that was sent by His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, all of them were Ugandans. So, I don't condone terrorism or that type of thing, but we must be concerned. I was discussing with my colleagues that in my life, I never knew that in Uganda would reach a time when a person can put on himself explosives and go and detonate himself, and he blasts like a balloon. And I've been telling my students that we can never get that in Uganda. I used to think it can stop in that Arab world. So what made these young men because they were all men. They have not told us that any one of them was a woman, to go to that kind of thing. And what is their motive? First of all, who are they? And the retired major here is going to assist us. Really, some of us are confused.
True.
We
shall
want
go
to know who
deep
are
in
these
there.
people.
Yeah.
Yes.
I hope he has the answers.
So number two,
Yeah.
and the last one, we need to know, now that it has happened, how sure are we that it's not going to happen again? Because, remember, we were on this show one time, and we were talking about these things. And it was as if we were convinced then by the person that such things cannot happen in this country now. It's not possible. We were warned by the British. In fact, they were warning their citizens. But I think we were also involved. We were assured by security that that warning is just a loud voice in the wilderness. There is nothing that can happen here of that level. And the French or the British may be having their own agenda. Now, what happened? Is it an illusion? I don't know whether people who watched what happened in Kampala at the beginning of this week, was it an illusion? Is it a dream, or it is real? I think it is real. So we need to go back. We need to go back
And that's those
and
fundamental questions.
interrogate the people who were warning us. They may have a clue about these things.
Yeah. Thank you, Doctor, for that historical perspective until today. I need to also invite in Sarah.
You know, as the doctor was speaking, I remembered now the statement from the police officer, which is now on T-shirts and everywhere. What can the police do?
It's already on the T-shirts.
Yes, there's a T-shirt. Now what can the police do? But of course it is a situation of helplessness. And very unfortunate that we have these events in our country. But to mention that terrorism is global and it's not an isolated, it's not to say that Uganda has committed a crime. I think the question that international scholars raise in line with the terrorism is, what are these countries that are prone to terror attacks and why? And then we need to discuss whether Uganda belongs to this category that is prone to terrorism, and then discuss the motive. Is there anything we need to change? What makes us prone to terror attacks as a country? There are three questions or three possible causes that drive countries to be prone to terror attacks. Among them is the international, the people challenging the international hegemonic system. And that belongs to the Al-Qaeda and the likes, challenging the dominance of the US and the rest of the agencies they deem as imperialists. We also use the same terminology here when it's convenient. We call our partners imperialists. And then the other day when they are talking well, then you know that business language to say you talk well. So when our partners talk well, then they are received the given VIP status and they are on a dining table. But when they ask the hard questions, then we brand them terrorists. So I don't know whether we also copy that ideology of Al-Qaeda, saying you are challenging the hegemonic international system in that line of branding foreign agents imperialists. And I hope the state will tell us. The second possible cause is a weak governance systems and inequality, or events that drive citizens to desperation to the extent of committing suicide, including becoming suicide bombers. From the first lockdown, I think the key highlights of the first lockdown, and we are not justifying terror attacks in this analysis. So in the first lockdown event, the most striking issue was the border rider who set himself ablaze in a police station in Masaka when his border was confiscated. And then when he went to look for it, he had no other means of livelihood. The police officer asked for a bribe, and he had no money. He had left no money for his family. And he poured the sodium component on himself and set himself ablaze in a police station. I think it was scandalous to us as a nation. Unfortunately, the leadership paid no attention to such events. There was no response. A lot of, even CPS that was a target of attack, there are a lot of motorcycles parked there. The people whose livelihood was derived from those motorcycles have no alternative. We have sectors in this country that have been under lockdown for 2 years, non-stop. Nobody's bothered to know how these people that we are driving livelihood from these sectors, how they are surviving for 2 years. Nobody's bothered. Even when schools came up and said, look, we need help, and with evidence of loans, the leadership told them to go to hell. True or false?
True.
Yes.
So when you have
Sell
this...
off part of your property?
Yes, go to hell. At one time, the Minister of Finance, spoke like, sorry, the deceased Minister of Agriculture, who told people to eat monkeys. Unfortunate or fortunate, I don't know, God called him. But how do you tell people who have a governance problem that if the animals are eating your crops, you also eat them? So then, several years down the road, you have a leadership that is telling people, providing education. Education is a key component of security. The larger definition of security and stability must include education. People offering an essential service to this country, 50% of the education in this country is provided by private operators.
More than 50.
I'm putting it at a lower end. It might be about 65. Yeah. So then you have lockdown, you have loans, you've not done any serious mitigation to the COVID effects for the middle class Ugandans. The only money that was dumped at UDB, of course, the people who dumped it, they know who has capacity to access them, and they are whatever, they are established patronage networks access that money. Nobody's bothered about the welfare of a common man in this country. When you look at the operations of the curfew, the people who suffer most the wrath of curfew implementation in this country are people who walk on foot, are people who use and ride borders. As the seemingly rich or less poor, because owning a car is not a status symbol in this country. The less poor, the middle class, the less poor, middle class, and upper continue to enjoy and nobody stops them. But you pass with a motorbike, normally I get scandalized because the desperacy within which motor riders drive past Chiboko, past arrest and confiscation of their motorcycles, any other vehicle can crash them. So if we drive each other to these levels, and we are debating whether Ugandans have reached the level of being suicide bombers or whether suicide bombers moved and accessed this country and killed the people that they killed. And I think that is information that should be coming through to citizens, because we need accountability on whether we are safe as a country or not. And the people whose mandate is to guarantee security have a duty to explain to the citizens. So we need to know, are these internal suicide bombers? Have we created conditions that drive Ugandans to such levels of desperation? Or was there penetration from across our porous borders or airport of terrorists coming into this country to kill people? And if so, then what are the measures in place? The names of the people said to have bombed these places are Ugandans.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they are Ugandans who have been here or who have driven in from neighboring terror camps because of the challenge of border management and even the corruption at these border points where even a terrorist can pass by giving Chinshudogo and they are not even checked. So we have, these are the weaknesses we have as a country. if you go to the levels of the changing of targets, because previously, mainly 98, 99, 2007, 8, and 2010, I think when we've had previous bomb attacks in Kampala, the targets have been the weak, unarmed, and defenseless citizens. And the president, even in his remarks after Kyambogo attack, he did say that these cowards go for citizens who are defenseless. So I don't know whether these cowards had him, and then they decided to go for the government targets this time. Because if you look at CPS, look at Parliament, the place that was bombed has 5 key ministries, including Office of the President. So you have Parliament, you have Office of the President, you have KCCA, you have Minister for Security, you have Minister for Education, you have Justice and Constitutional Affairs, you have Foreign Affairs, and ICT and Finance. And Trade. About 8 ministries in that location that was targeted. So have they now changed and are going for real targets? Then what I find unfortunate, as I summarize, because I know we are delving into the depths of the debate, immediately before attacks, and I don't know whether this is the design of police or the design of Afande Nanga on his own as a person, he seems in a rush to mention details of who is responsible on the scene of the crime before any investigation is done. That portrays 2 things. One is that either they know the plans and who is planning what and where, so that, you know, so that if an attack happens, then I am able to rush, and I know people who were planning it and they've now done it, and then I say, media, this is it. Because it has just happened. So where does Enanga get information that informs what he tells people as to who is responsible immediately, minutes after these ugly events have happened?
Interesting, Sarah. You have a lot of... yes.
I wanted to comment on something little. My brother here said, I concur with him, but not entirely. And the lawyer in me tells me that a paragraph in an affidavit not expressively denying amounts to accepting it. He said many things which were in concurrence with what I said, but he mentioned that NRM came through terror approach.
That is true.
Which I want to denounce. That is not true, because the definition of terrorism is clear. It's not optional. It's not your definition, everybody's definition.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
We have an act which defines terrorism. We have international instruments that define terrorism. A revolutionary struggle and a liberation war, which came with NRM, is not terrorism. I dare you pick a definition in any act, pick a definition in any international instrument, and check the ingredients if it meets that. So I would like to say,
my learned friend, you can also refer to the consent theory. Before you announce and capture power, you can be charged with terrorism and treason.
No, you can be charged of
treason and misconsideration.
Treason is not. I know it's your turn. So I know it's your turn, but just say something very quickly. I don't want us to spoil this conversation. I was being very gentle because, Comrade Awich, please don't dare take us into that. I'm simply saying that because people have died and we've moved on, I'm really trying to be very kind to NRA to say that actually they came through terrorism. But really, after 35 years, like Sarah is saying, we should do the best possible we can to try and find alternative ways by which we should be able to go forward.
Which definition are you using?
If you're being if you're playing semantics and language is not part of my weaknesses, and then we can go.
No, you can cite an authority. This provision. Okay, fine.
Let me put it this way. Awich, you're a lawyer. The fact that you actually go and organize in Kabamba, pick up arms illegally, and throw bombs. The fact that I actually attack police stations in rural parts of Luweero, the fact that I actually organize and come and throw bombs at the Ministry of Internal Affairs, at Crescent Towers, and you do exactly the kind of thing that these guys have done in Kampala. What's the difference between that and what we're talking about today?
Can I give information?
Okay.
Can I give information?
We'll allow you to.
What about the other one was an elected government, democratically elected, and you had lost elections. Here is neither here nor there, because I don't know who elected Museveni to State House 35 years ago.
Let me just give some information without siding with these
any.
two senior citizens. The first justification of a revolution, a clear one, which is scholastic, was given by John Locke. John Locke was another British philosopher, and is accused for having instigated the French Revolution. Part of what he wrote. He allows a revolution. He says that a revolution is a very good thing against any oppressive authority, but he gives conditions. Condition number one, that revolution is not going to affect people negatively.
Good. Thank you.
Number two, he says that revolution should not be costly. And number three, that revolution should meet the consent of the people.
Amen.
In other words, should be a people's
Amen.
revolution.
Amen.
So judge yourselves and
all the requirements. We actually meet all. But what I'm saying
this is a conversation.
I don't want to go into
let's have.
I don't know what referendum took place in the world, but anyway, carry on. It's your time, my brother.
Definition, the definition is not my own making. It is an act of parliament. It is in the international conventions, and what you're saying doesn't fit in that definition.
The definition. Sarah, you wanted to say something before we move on to.
No. I think let's move to this.
Okay, I wanted to ask.
After the
Yes,
definition of the professor, I
summed up.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask Afande, is that should we get worried as citizens of another possible attack? You know, at this point, top on the security concern is whether we could have another possible kind of attack in any way. Do you think it's something that we could be worried of?
Well, Professor likes quoting English philosopher. I think he has quoted both two English philosophers. But I also like to quote an
Quote
English
another
saying.
one.
No, an English saying which says never say never.
Okay.
Then I asked, then why did you invent the word at all? Why did you invent the word? Then you should have invented for us. You should have invented the word never. I think the idea behind that you can't predict the future. There's so many factors and dynamics which lead. Future is so dark. I personally like going for all this music on Friday, and I always tell my family, I go there because
you have already
I've
seen
lived
it.
it. I've seen it. Even if I'm hearing a music where at one time I was in NRA with one side of my leg wearing a blue slipper, another side is wearing a red slipper.
I remember that.
With a civilian shirt and a combat top. But I heard that music. So it reminds me. So history, you have lived it, and that's why we love the past. I'm glad the professor is a professor of history. You have lived, you have seen it, and you have learned it. But future, you don't know. So that's why the English say never. Then you ask, then why did you invent the word if we are not supposed to use it? In this context, therefore, I'm saying it's difficult to say it will never come. I've heard the Minister of Security saying it will not or it will never. But I wonder, I mean, you have no control. We had similar pronouncement during the war with Kony, where General Kazin would come up and say, by this time I would have finished. And the deadline comes and passes, simply because you don't know the future. And you don't know, and the future is embodied with factors that lead to this and how you solve it. So I don't know, you can't tell me that I would know whether this is the last or not. But all I know is that as a state and as a government, when faced with these challenges, we have institutions in place which puts its heads down. They are competent persons, and we believe that this is the right time to show their competency, because generals are made in times of war, not really sitting and relaxing. So these challenging situations, with the experts that we have, and hopefully the logistics and finance there too, because it requires money, we would think that we're doing everything else to prevent it. But I wouldn't like to give a false hope of never. But I would like to give hope that things are being done, experts are set in place. And besides, not only our expertise, we have the Joint Anti-Terrorism Team, which greatly coordinates with other forces around the world that fights terrorism. We have deep connection with them. So this is not only a struggle that will be done by our local experts or even our local funding. It is coordinated by many other global forces. So I would like to give hope that people should hope well that the government that you put in place has put in technical people. We interact with the foreign technical experts, and we're going to pursue it. And without saying it will never happen, but we shall definitely save people's life and make people feel free once again.
Thank you. I wanted to also, Ochieno, you earlier said that of course, we're not sure of who these persons are, but of course, like Sarah said, that could be possible. There are issues that could be rising from frustration. The young people are really possibly frustrated. The economy has been, almost upside down. So we're trying to ask, could this be?
Actually, Demian, if some Ugandans can kill themselves for free, how about killing themselves for some money?
No, incidentally, if you read terrorism as the Middle East type of terrorism, doesn't involve money. No, if it involved money, the American International War on Terrorism would buy these people away from money. It doesn't. It is about the brain. You are slowly but surely coached into believing that what you are doing is a conviction. If they were to be given $1 million, America would give them $2 million. They wouldn't shoot. This terrorism.
If they know them.
If they have the system. That's why they warn us. The professor says, and we all know.
Yeah, but what they predicted on Afghanistan did not even last.
What happens is, but I want to say that especially the Middle East kind of terrorism does not involve cash on what they call the methadone. The methadone are actually a brain work. You are made to believe in what you're doing, but also there's a bit of coercion because it reaches a point when you are executing, should you try to abort, there's another high watching you that can even kill you. So it is a mixture of brainwashing and coercion. I could say 90% brain work, the other 10% coercion. So it doesn't involve money.
But and
if it involves money here, then it will be done with very easily. If the terrorism here, the homeborn terrorism includes people who are paid to do it, then it will be so.
Because we know Museveni will give him the whole treasury. Yeah. But I think in the past, that's one of the things that Sarah was saying, just briefly, that let's not pronounce too early. The issues at the stage is let's investigate what exactly are the underlying.
Because
and
if
you risk dismissing one element.
If you find a fund that the families of these victims and indeed received some money, what will that mean?
From the sponsor?
From whoever it is.
Because it happens in some instances. People, the suicide bombers demand that you take care of their families and then they are ready to go.
Interesting.
Yes, they take up their family, not because, for their families, not for the
you give it to the family.
Not for the methadone. The methadone, well, loosely you have all heard that. Part of the brainwash is you get 70 virgins in heaven.
And what would you do with the virgins?
They would all be your wives. But the point is, that is just part of the brainwash. Yes. Even the families that they may hint on is for the security of the family. But they don't have economic intentions. If they have personal economic intentions, that is very easy. They would be solved.
It's something that I wanted to possibly pose to Ochieno and ask, the minister yesterday said that this could have been sent. They possibly didn't know that they were carrying these, and possibly when they reached that point, they asked possibly to call the person, and it seemed like the people who were taking all these gadgets or whatever, the detonators, were not in the know of what they were carrying. But I wanted to first ask Ochieno, that are these individual faults or like persons coming out to do this individually? Is it a smaller group, or it is clinched to a bigger terrorist organization somewhere?
That's exactly the point Sarah was making, and I think that's the point that I'm actually trying to persuade this panel, and actually to persuade Ugandans to take as a route. But also a line that I'm trying to attempt to persuade this guy's boss, Museveni, to design and frame himself as a leader, to create a situation in which when a major incident like this actually does happen, one, there is a provision of leadership. Two, people cease their petty, self-centered affiliations. In fact, by today, if I were a president, if it was a UPC president, I believe that with the terrorism that has happened in this country in the last 10 or so years, perhaps the National Security Council today already would be, and this is a major pronouncement, it would be one which is bipartisan.
We're not sure about that.
No, I'm saying because that doesn't exist. I'm giving you a deliberate answer, and I'm helping this regime as a way going forward. Because about the grievances, one amongst Ugandans and some other people whom we don't know. I'm simply saying that we don't know who did this. One of the things I've also said in the last 2-3 days is this, that actually these pronouncements should cease coming from some funny, failure RDCs in town, or perhaps even Mr. Museveni before he's properly briefed. These should be matters that should be left by professional police. It's one of the reasons why I'm completely convinced that we need to be able to equip our police as the civil force in the lead, so that when incidents like this happen, like Sarah was saying, after a terrorist attack, police simply say that we have received this is happening, this is happening, this is the latest, you're checking fire brigade and the medical service, things like that, we'll come back to you. They got the information from whichever other arm of government. And
information,
then
Joseph, what the US does, they say, CNN, what do we know so far?
Yes.
So there's nothing wrong with the police coming and saying, what do we know so far? 3 people have been blown up by the explosives themselves.
We don't know the details.
We are going to find out their details and the people behind them. 3 people are casualties. They've been injured in this, they've died in these explosions. There are 33 people injured and they are in Mulago. This is what we know so far. We shall update you as we carry out investigations. There's nothing wrong with it.
And 1 or 2 of the other information, these ones are sensitive at the moment, we can't go into, but we'll update you as it's appropriate.
Yes.
So we're giving,
there's nothing wrong with it.
We're giving free information and helping the regime that is actually paid to do exactly what we're trying to talk about. So at the moment, we really don't know. And for me, being the politician, I'm really waiting really for Mr. Museveni, whom I pay with the security services, to come and provide me with the information so that I'm able to dissect this and to use as a message to encourage Ugandans that let's come together, let's seize any process that involves the loss of lives of our people. And when there is a grievance, a national grievance, if there's a national grievance, let there be a platform in which we're able to tease through these things. And I think Awich Pollar is also right, that where there is an element of evidence of creation of situations that compel people to go to get through indoctrination of whatever nature, it becomes a national debate. That is my job as a politician, to help divine and design that with the likes of Museveni's. Of course, for them, they might have had experiences of indoctrination because they know NRA indoctrinated young people. Some of these guys take people to Chankwanzi. UPC cannot take people to Chankwanzi. NRA does. Things like that. This is the kind of conversation we have today. But most importantly, what is it that makes a young average citizen so angry that they would actually pick up an arm to shoot somebody? That's what, just to shoot somebody. What is it that makes an average Ugandan so angry, like Sarah was trying to say, that they actually go and blow up themselves in front of a police station and does not become a national crisis? And what is it that creates a situation in which you go through another mayhem in Kampala, the kind of mayhem that we experienced here in the 80s, when some kind of people had been rejected politically, had proposed to go ahead and cause these kind of things in Kampala? What is it that after 35 years, NRA has not been able to do to our people materially, that they now want to opt for another way, particularly if it's indigenous domestic Ugandans? What is it that we can't resolve? Final point, Damien. I talk as one of the lead people responsible for persuading Museveni's regime through their Western friends to talk with the rebels in northern Uganda. And I remember talking to some of these other people beyond the details for which I can't go on at the moment, to simply say that Joseph Waters had said, no, we don't know, we need to know who are this. Yes, we need to check and know. You have the intelligence to know. We contributed directly to silencing for guns in northern Uganda. In a way, it was through engagement. This is possible. Let's get hold of it at the moment. Let it actually, I hope it does not become this thing about those noob guys, those other helpless guys in Namambe, in Nagongoro, Toro, UPC, Kanure. Let it be a genuine national conversation. What is it? Where is it coming from? So that we have a conversation. And I hope, let it not be about the usual ADF, IC, whatever kind of, which ADF I'm still waiting, actually trying to establish what exactly is it they represent, who are their leaders, what are their grievances, and what efforts have been made to try and address them.
Yeah, interesting, Joseph. I want to bring on Doctor. Of course, we had the statement already out, and with the president, and we want to understand how deep is it? Is it really a foreign link? There's some foreign link into this terrorism, or it is really some domestic kind of orchestration that is happening with, of course, the ongoing situations in the country.
Yeah, with the due respect, Damian, I think there is a structural problem in our country. And this structural problem has caused a lot of misinformation. Sometimes you don't want to listen to somebody and you take it as authority. For example, you're talking about a statement. I don't know whether what the president released was a statement. Because those were sentences.
Was it
I don't. I've been studying President Yoweri Museveni for a very long time, and comparing him to other leaders in the world. I can give you an example. In 1998, there was a huge uproar in Uganda here about the Land Act. That's the time when they were finalizing the Land Act. And the president normally comes in style. He put on his combat and went to TV, and he gave a statement of a head of state. And I think people had to
calm down.
Calm down. There is a name of the person he warned there. He said there is a man called Mulindwa Muwonge. If he has not called me this Westerner, that he will have forgiven me, but in normality he calls me Munyarwanda. Stop. And in little time I found Mulindwa Muwonge was working with him at UBC. So number one,
was that a story?
I don't really understand. It was a statement from the head of state.
Okay.
The last time I was really shocked. I was watching TV, then a journalist relays the tweet from the president. And I said, what has happened to our country? And of course, the earlier information from Enanga. So if I am a scholar and looking at the work of a student and he has quoted such things, I will not respect it. It will not be authority information. Because all of us here know a statement from a head of state, how it looks like, a statement from police, because Enanga that you mentioned does not speak there as Enanga, speaks there as the spokesman of Uganda Police Force. Now, the first problem in this country is very quick pronouncements. Very quick pronouncements. Wherever something happens, there is a very quick pronouncement, and that pronouncement later starts contradicting itself until it fizzles in thin air. For those of you who can remember, when Joan Kagezi was gunned down here, near us here in Kiwatule, immediately a statement came showing who those people were. And the government knew all of them. But I've been checking on a daily basis. None of those people have been held, presented before the court of law, and convicted, or there have been a lot of arrests, a lot of them, and I don't want to go up to the others. So I think our country needs to go back to the best practices of communicating to the people. Otherwise, the people are going to lose trust in our in these statements. Because today you say
they haven't.
Today you say, like for example, the most horrendous, because that was almost my colleague of Felix Kawesi. They said they knew who the people were. Then they arrested over 100 Muslims, mainly Muslim. They said they were Muslim terrorists. Then I was again shocked when I saw Kale Kaihura being presented in a court in Machindi. And one of the charges was related to Kawesi. I said, this man has also become a Muslim. So what I'm trying to say is that I think our senior colleagues in government needed to organize themselves. For example, there was no way a man blasts up himself and in about 12 hours, you know who he is.
And the cause.
Because I study some little security. I'm not a security person, but I study some little security. That a typical terrorist cannot move with a valid ID.
No.
That is the first thing you should always say. Even if it is valid, you have to suspect it until you prove that it is valid.
Yes,
so how do you prove? You would have to get this person, check in the records, for our case, check with the NIRA. If those are the names, you will have now to put the name on the individual, and that can only be after a very serious forensic study. Because even if I die in an accident, there is no way people are just going to get an ID near me, then they say this is Ojambo. So by somebody releasing names of terrorists who have blown up themselves in a 12-hour time, in my view, it's not proper. And I would think that our security officers need to work on that. Number two, you can't say that you knew these people, because that's what our police normally tells us, that we know these people and we have been following them.
And then what did
Now, when you look at our constitution and the role of police, the biggest role is to prevent.
Yes.
To prevent. So when it happens, then means that you have abdicated your duty. I'm not accusing my very good protectors, the Uganda police, but the information that they give. Then there was an argument here of money or no money. Me, I want to say it this way, that before a person reaches to be a terrorist, there are conditions that have made him or her. So it doesn't matter whether this person has been given money or has been indoctrinated. It's very rare to hear that a son of Sudir will become a suicide bomber. Because of the conditions, he's somehow conditioned to driving rally, doing things which are consumption because he has the money to consume. If you got all these people, suspects and those who have already been committed to court and proven to be terrorists, you will discover that their background is somehow shaky.
The Richard of the earth.
Somehow shaky. Because when you are in need, you have a strong ideology. When you are in need. For example, right now me, I don't know, however much you have siasa or even witchcraft combined, it would be very difficult to take me to that direction. Because I have something to lose. I now have something to lose. In most cases, it is because people have nothing to lose. Yeah. So that's why the economy comes in. And that's why we struggle, that we make sure that we make our economy better. That's where I agree with her. When the economy is better, there are very few people who are willing to do such things. Even if you go to somebody will ask me, what about the terrorism in the United States and these other places? Yes, it happens. But even those ones, if you trace them,
the profile is the same.
If you profile them properly, you will discover that they are coming from disadvantaged communities. So in my view, these people may not have money, but we need to mind about a family or a home in Uganda. I'm telling you, this country, people are looking at big things where a bomb blast has taken place and people have died. People are dying silently in our communities these days. Young men are so committed that you are passing, walking, you have a laptop, and a guy hits you with a brick.
They'll die. Yeah.
With a brick. It happened in our university here in Kyambogo. Somebody hit one of our lecturers with a brick to pick a laptop, and he went away with it. There was a teacher of Kyambogo College who was doing his work on a phone where there is a network thing. A person came with a brick, hit him, and he died. These ones, we don't record them because they are 111. But if you count, how many happen in Kamocha, in Namongo, in all these places? What is the cause of this? They are young people who have now discovered. I normally tell people that as we compartment, as we divide the society, because right now we have about 3 societies in Uganda. We have the society of people who have power, the ones who are governing us. They have power. For them, everything is okay for them. They travel. They drive on the right hand. Nothing. When they come in a hospital, they don't line up. They just walk to the counter. When you are in a market, when they enter the market, they stop other people and they are served. And you ask, who is that? He said, hey, you don't know him. That is Kano so and so. Yeah, okay. So Kano, so what? So there is that power. Then we have the educated, where maybe you will accuse me, that's where I belong. But the educated have also been graded into 2. The top echelon, who have gone to these international schools and the top schools. So they get out, and then when they get out, they have jobs waiting for them because they have done the right courses. Then the government tells people that these ones who are doing this bogus literature, and those are stupid people. So for them, they go, the best they can do is to become a teacher or somebody in the office to assist. So it also creates another class. Then there are our majority who are in the villages. They don't earn anything. They are just there, but they are producing children. And when they produce children, they are told that the only place to get a life is the city. The city, Kampala, Jinja, those cities that we have right now. But most of them, even the ones of Mbarara, are struggling to come to Kampala. When they reach here, they discover that they don't belong here. So in the city here, now we have created a village city. I don't know whether you have been observing. In Kampala here, you have a village city, what you would call the peri-urban. Now the peri-urban is a den of everything. Because these people come here, they don't have where to stay, they don't have what to eat, they don't have anything. So it is very easy to lure them into these things. And these are things we need to look at. So I think, in my view, we need to look at how we can, you cannot put up a society where everybody is equal. But we need to reduce. For example, somebody needs to go to Kyambogo or railway, where people are getting passports. It is saddened. I am anticipating that in this country very soon we shall not have young women of 20 to 40 years. They are leaving the country, going to Arab world. And when you ask them, one time I sat with one, and she was almost in tears. They are forced, the first thing they are forced to do is to behave like they are Muslims. Whether you're a Christian or you are not a Christian, survive there. Number 2, you know very well that women are a pillar of society in our country. Somebody who has lived in Afghanistan for 10 years, for 8 years, comes back to Uganda, is bringing in a lot of things, some you have never heard of. So that one, one time I was discussing with a person in the government and said, what is wrong with that? Didn't see the problem. They are going to get opportunity and they repatriate money back. But what about the bad things that they have carried in their heads? Because they come back when they are frustrated, they tell you stories, they have learned so many things, because many of them, to come back, they have to escape. They have to escape from the other people. So they narrate and they agree. And they coach each other to do so many bad things that look at security. So the economy here cannot be undermined. You have to really we have to really fix the economy. Lastly, is now, let's go to the situation. The situation in Kampala right now, and it's good, my senior colleagues here have agreed that we are uncertain. But in a time of uncertainty, there must be somebody who is certain. Because if all of us say we are not certain, then there is a problem. How do we do that? Let's find out the questions that I asked. Who are these people? Because if we know, then we are going to solve a problem. But I want to agree with the Major. You may solve the bomb blasts, but something else will come up. But if we got to know who these people are, and we cannot know these people, because right now I really feel that the investigations have already been jeopardized. Because if Ojambo has already been announced in the national media that he's a terrorist, and I am a mother of Ojambo, the best thing I have to do is to go in the middle of the lake and hide, so you don't get information. So why does police, for instance, in this country, I want to ask, why does police parade suspects who have not even been investigated on criminal matters? Number two, why does police and government publicize these people in public? Because once you publicize, you have killed evidence. Just like something I normally tell my friends. You know, in the evening when we are watching football out there, a man emerges and he's saying, change the channel. And you say, please don't change. Because he tells you, you don't know that I am an officer. You say, what? Nzindimbega. Can you tell people that you are a beggar again? You have just killed your job. So I think we need to restructure.
But why don't I first also talk? You are sabotaging me. And the quarrel of women, you will not manage.
You know, one thing that the police has to do. One thing that
okay, 30 seconds and I give Sarah, then we break.
Yeah, indeed. You know, one other thing that the police must not do, and the future UPC government will ensure it doesn't happen, is this. No, seriously. Because, and I'm saying it's not politics. What the police normally would do, because I talked about this about birth and death certificates, to try and make sure that we mitigate unnecessary deaths, so that anybody who kills anybody, including a dubious thing in hospital, somebody takes responsibility. That this death must be certified. If not, you'll be found to account. The other thing, as you're absolutely right, when somebody actually dies in this situation, even if it is, quote, terror, what the police should do, and it's a free lesson for you guys, is check with next of kin. Decent, civilized communities, including UPC government, normally say, we wait until you contact next of kin. You do not release people's names.
Interesting. Sarah, I need to give you 30 seconds, but I'll start with you right after the break. You could take on.
You're in trouble. No, let me, since I have a little time, let me just connect with the issue of children we are dumping into the Middle East. And then you see government celebrating and just thumbing for selling young people into modern day slavery. Just the last time I traveled to Kenya, we came with a girl on the flight who had been deported after detention of 2 weeks in the United Arab Emirates. She was a primary school teacher in Masaka, a young girl, out of frustration of continued closure of schools with no mitigation to the people who have volunteered their education skills and life to educate future generations of this country, she got frustrated and thought refugee in the Middle East. And then when she reached there, she found that the conditions, she could not withstand the harassment, the treatment to the people that had bought her into that modern slavery. So when she started arguing and saying, but this can't be, and this, so they reported her to police, and then she was deported with no passport. All her documents,
that's what they do,
clothes
actually, apparently.
were confiscated. She reached the airport, the COVID regulations, no money, no, you are in detention for 2 weeks. No money, no passport, just the deportation letter that helped you to board. She was stranded at the testing center. By then we were still testing from that beach. So I asked the people in charge of that center, I said, how do you deal with deported cases? Because they are not, she can't be the only one. You must prevent the disease from entering the country. You are using taxpayers' money. You are milking money, exploiting citizens. Can't you spare and say every day we have space of 10 free tests in case of deportations? Because there are very few people who are deported with money. We spent there for more than 4 hours. I spent 2 hours arguing with these people to test this girl. She had no money to feed. She had nowhere to sleep. She could not test. So first, we had to make sure she's given where to sleep in the night. Then we were told that since she doesn't have money, they will test her last towards morning when all flights are over. Then I said, how can we treat each other like this? You know, we are worse than animals in this country. The way we treat each other, we are worse than animals, wild animals. Very unfortunate. So we had to raise money for her meals and transport. And I told those people, I left her my number. I said, if they don't test you by morning, call me, I get you money, but I will take them on. So I think since she didn't call, maybe they tested her. But can you imagine that? Really, this government? I will come back after the break.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sarah. And of course, you've ensured we end on a sad note. But again, let's have this short break. And of course, our conversation is on and is following. We are streaming live on YouTube, but also follow our conversation on our hashtag #ChatShowUG on Twitter. Please have a conversation there. Post your comments there. Let's have the discussion flowing. Let's have try to forge a way of how we could live into a better country, which we have already, but also try to follow this conversation on Facebook. Let's have this short break. Of course, we've been powered by Inspire Africa Coffee, is what is powering our conversation today. And of course, every Friday that we convene here. Let's meet after this short break. Welcome back from the short break, and of course we are still having our conversation around the situation in the country, but also we'll dig a little deep into of course the rising prices of commodities in the country, possibly which way for our country. And joined on the panel, of course, we have Sarah, we have Robert, we have Paula and Joseph. Sarah, you earlier was protesting time. So.
You are avoiding gender equality.
But even the start had given you all the time, but you handed over your time to Major. So I need to ask.
It was all the solidarity.
We are discussing this whole terror and of course apportioning some kind of blame somewhere. But I want to ask, what role do we as a community play in this situation? Because terrorist violence really reflects the feelings of the broader community. But that does not mean that, of course, we have no role to play as a community.
Well, the UN adopted counter-terrorism measures start with the citizens and populations. Terrorism can be fought in main 3 ways. There are other ways. The first way and fastest and most effective is to mobilize citizens. against terrorism by sensitizing them, putting them on alert on things to do, places to avoid, based on well-coordinated information with anti-terrorism networks globally. So if you have, let me say this example, current terror attacks, where we got a travel alert by the British government on the upcoming terror attacks on Uganda, and then the people here in charge of security said the British were rumor mongers and you know, scaremongers amongst the people. Instead, we should have used that information to mobilize citizens, get back to, you know, severe terror threat mode. Make sure there are checks at all public places. Make sure the citizens are they report every suspicious issue. Make sure our children don't pick bombs. Ever since the Kyambogo attacks, I think children in Chibuku and Nakaseke have picked explosives and they've exploded on them. So what mobilization have we done with the citizens? The second aspect you used to counter, you know, terror is financing. You must block terror financing, because if you don't, then you have no countermeasures to know where the money is moving. I've been reading reports on these recent terror attacks in Kampala, and the predictions, fellow citizens, are that they will go up to the end of the year. These are reports by the Institute for Security Studies in South Africa. They did indicate that the affiliate of the Islamic State, formerly ADF, but which changed faction, and now they headed after arrest of Jamil, they are no longer ADF. They are an affiliate of Islamic State, Central African Republic, and that's their name. And that brings us to the original questions. We keep hearing that these terror attacks are done by ADF from our people in charge of security. Which ADF are they referring to? First, nationally, the president announced a defeat of ADF 2 years ago in his official communication to the country. Two, the remnants of ADF have rebranded and moved on. They are no longer ADF. So when we have comments such as, we know it's responsible and it's ADF, what ADF are we being hit by ghosts? Who is hitting us? You are telling Ugandans, an non-existing entity, that it is in charge of killing citizens. Are you really in charge? So you must deal with the financing mechanism of the terrorists. The affiliate of Islamic State, according to the Institute of Security Studies in South Africa, has teamed up with Al-Shabaab. And according to their findings, they are responsible for the Kampala terror attacks. And that, according to them, explains the change of targets and means of executing their missions. So they suspect the motive is grievances of Al-Shabaab in Somalia and grievances of former ADF. So that has created a combination. And how are they financed? Even international reports show that the recent terror alerts, both by Kenya and UK and South Africa, and the same countries, Kenya shared information with our security chiefs in this country on the movement of terror finances. So you have the financing linked to British, UK, and South Africa in their movements. And this is money that was wired into this country. But we have let it to go and finance terrorism. Where is the Financial Intelligence Authority? Is it only concentrating on NGOs and closing their accounts when we are being hit by terrorists?
And democratic political organizations.
Yes, of course, yes. And then the third element that must be checked is the movements. So if these people are Ugandans, then it goes back to the debate we've just had. If the Ugandans grown up here who have not moved into Uganda recently, what is the cause? What is driving Ugandans to that desperation of suicide bombing? If these people have just moved into Uganda, where did they pass? Where are they coming from? And how are you able to make sure that other people do not get access to our country to kill Ugandans in a senseless and unjustifiable manner like they do. So once you are unable to check the three, mobilize people, put them on alert, depending on the threats, check financing, check movements, you cannot defeat terrorism.
Interesting, Sarah. I want to bring in Major Awich. How much are you involving the community in countering this terrorism? Because it's just yesterday, after this, the other day when the blast came out, that's when we saw quite a lot of flyers from GCIC.
Then I forgot one element.
Yes.
The Institute for Security Studies says Islamic State and Al-Shabaab are using one method of financing is through chain restaurants. I don't know whether these chain restaurants are in Uganda yet, they are in Mozambique. So this is also information available on the internet that we should check if they are chain restaurants. And the purpose is that if you close one restaurant, you don't know the other, and they're able to keep financing their work. So are we able to check?
So more of the financing is they have capital that is already generated through these restaurants. So
through dubious investors.
Yes, that's why we're coming in. How much are we involved as a people? And like we're saying, it's just the other day we saw. Then that's when we saw flyers from police from everywhere giving directives of how you get to know who are these people, and they were on social media. And of course, not all of us are really on social media. Not even the people down there. Like Ojambo was saying, the community, the village people would get access to these flyers that were shared all over internet.
Of course, the long-term approach stems from what colleagues have said, the economic aspect. Because if you do firefighting or case-by-case basis, you may not solve it. We all agree that even people who are taken to indoctrination are a vulnerable class, are the classes who are economically poor, who have nothing to lose. And you find the person is either committed to the mosque or what, all this, but really that is it. So the economic aspect among the people has to be addressed. You are aware that many poverty elevation ventures have been put in place through the Office of the Prime Ministers and Operation Wealth Creation and others. So the people-based approach, first of all, is how much are you doing, or how much are we doing to pull people out of poverty? So it may appear a long-term solution. Of course, it has been started before, but it must be addressed. That the more somebody is economically squeezed, the easier or the more vulnerable he is to being indoctrinated and feeling that martyrdom, it's the right thing to do. The other approach is, of course, the day-to-day thing, how you involve the people in the awareness, into first agreeing that terror is a bad thing, and making them aware. You can do it through the media or through whatever means, but also the specific items that we have long done, like putting flyers as you're putting announcement notices and saying, if you get this thing, don't pick it, or if you get a suspicious character, report and all that. So there is need for a lot of involvement of for the people. So I would divide it into two ways. One, the long-term economic aspect to solutions to eradicate vulnerability, and the operational aspect of involvement that we can do on a day-to-day basis. Those can be among the mitigations of dealing with the terrorism. But remember also that there's the strong foreign aspect. So even if you deal with the internal aspect, somehow the foreign aspect will come in. But we hope that what we deal in as internal will mitigate the foreign aspect of exported terrorism. But if it is internal born, I don't think it is internal born terrorism. I think what is internal was the bomb itself, that the bomb is domestic. But the terrorism, to me, it has connection with outside. As to how our
there's a connection from the outside, but they are using our
yes, they are using. But then also some people may say that we also have our own bomb, meaning that our own internal contradictions as crystallized to that approach. It has crystallized without necessarily having connection. But as Sarah says, already researchers and experts are linking it to outside. But be as it is, I am saying that both the long and the short-term approach of community involvement will also be challenged by foreign hands. But be it as it is our duty as a country to ensure that the measures within our means are dealt with. Of course, I would also borrow the fact that looking into the source of financing is also a community approach, because these are finances within us. The chain restaurants are among us. So I earlier on stated that it is a multi-approach. It's not a one approach system, but it's there. And as I said earlier, we hope that the experts that are doing it, and I'm sure they're doing it, but they should do it well and very fast.
Yeah, but you have the young people who are really frustrated. Like Sarah said, really, you have these borders that are being arrested all the time. The young people, their borders are taken. How much are we doing in that line to ensure that some of these, because these are the young people that are later dragged into some of these fights?
You have and 80% of borders are on loan. Exactly. The owners of the money, the companies like Tugende or whatever, they want their loan payments per week.
Well, I talked of the economic. The economic is broad. You may not unpackage it in this kind of discussion. It's a big and a broad thing. And so many of those fall into the aspect. And I already don't need to repeat that it's a multi-approach. So we can't really enumerate all of them. But we really need a community involvement of the people. Because if you came up with to say you can do it over and above the people, you won't succeed, because it's among the people. It is bred among the people. It hurts the people. So people should have an active role in the solution comes from the people. So it must be manufactured from the people. And that is why I'm saying it is both long-term and short-term, and including the economic aspect of it. Not security per se. Because if you think that you have to deal with it in an ideal security, in abstract, where it involves roadblocks or checking here and there, it may not be a security per se. So, but in aspects of security, I said, it has been done and it should continue to be done. And even more details and more strengthened measures which are involving people should be done.
Interesting. So Joseph, how does the attack fit into the overall level of violence? You know, when a terrorist strike, there's often a sense of that violence is on the rise.
I think broadly it is very much about the context within which all of us seem to agree that whether it's terrorism or unruly youths in the street of Kampala, or in political terms, being rejected from Rwakitura because your views are not consistent with the people in a democratic means, it is bound like that. What is clear, though, is that first, I want to repeat that we need to have a national leadership. The leadership at the top, the guys who rule this country, need to come up and say we have a national crisis. And the national crisis is this terror. Provide leadership, create an enabling environment in which all political leaders, because these are political issues, political leaders come together, focus on the question of national security. Then perhaps we have a conversation about strategic national interest. The conversation about strategic national interest will take us to where, if there is a possibility that this is a matter that emerges out of grievances external to Uganda, we begin to have a conversation on Uganda's continued meddling in affairs of our neighbors and Uganda's presence in Somalia in the event that this is something linked to one of those grievances, where then citizens and political leaders genuinely do have a conversation as to whether, if it were true, what we're doing in Sudan, in this case Somalia, is necessarily of strategic national interest for Uganda, whether it is worthy, in this case, the implications, a return to by fire in the form of terrorism. That is, in case it is external. But locally, if we are to mitigate beyond the political conversation, we shall have to look at, usually, the professor will be writing grievances, whether it's a Karamojong people who think that all their goals are being manufactured and wired out by a privileged few, and they don't see it in their schools and their hospitals, the possibilities for their children also going to Harvard, or Ochieno, whose rocks in Tororo and the control of the hands of a few dubious people who don't have a relationship with Bukedi, or people in Bunyoro who think that their oil is bound to come, but because of the manner in which the national polity and economics is designed, there's no possibility that they may necessarily benefit generally. Or an average person from Uganda who thinks that they voted for their son and they did not get, they were rigged out, because that's one other thing. The assumption that, yes, we saw everyone else was voting for our son, so we must have won. That happened in 1980. So it may not necessarily have been victory. These are perceptions, political perceptions. And they will impact on how people then react to the situation. So it may be related to last elections. It may be related to grievances about people who were senselessly killed, mostly last year. And it may be associated with anything, including, by and large, without prejudice, possibly, thankfully, in a way, the mainly named Muslims, but the grievances in the north and the east of this country that have never been resolved. There are grievances about Kasese that have never been resolved. All these are things that we need to be able to have conversations with. And then after that, we come back and we begin to look at how we share from our national budgets the proceeds that go to education. You're actually right. I've got a friend who happens to be UPC from Rukunjiri. And this guy is a teacher. And he's a young guy, and sometimes when he's trying to hint to you that is actually literally stranded with a young family, he's telling you that he has no livelihood, ways to basically sustain a young family. And he's been at home and with his wife, and they're looking at each other, and there is no hope. All these things can come from anywhere and everywhere. Of course, at the moment, from intelligence, the first is particularly Ugandans and Ugandans who are without prejudice, Muslims. But as I said, it may be opportunistic. The terrorists might be so diplomatic. I think I was trying to tell some foreign media house the other day, they're not stupid. They could say that let's front the Muslims, when actually the underlying guys with the grievances are not necessarily anything to do with Islamists. All these are possibilities. So where is this country where we have a national conversation, including with professionals in academia, who then come in to debate these things freely? What my worry is, and I hope Mr. Museveni doesn't make that mistake this evening or whenever he addresses the nation, this business of immediately becomes a crisis like this. We're busy trying to discuss and try and find solutions. It becomes a traumatic NRA thing. He's the expert at it, and his security is the expert in it, and it's their thing as their NRA thing, and this is what we, and I, rather than we, the people of Uganda. So maybe, Comrade Awich, between now and in the evening, that is, I'm told Mr. Museveni is speaking today, Friday. So if it's the case
okay,
that...
so it's tomorrow.
Saturday is
yeah,
pushed to Saturday.
Yes.
You see,
Saturday?
Yes, postponed to Saturday.
So maybe those kinds of considerations. That, in my opinion, is how this thing is going to be entangled. And I just want to repeat, these are matters which are not political. The matters of the livelihood of the citizens of this country cannot be about a particular political grouping or particular identity community in this country. But also, most importantly, whatever it is, the possibilities of the futures of our country cannot be left in the hands of NRA. Maybe, perhaps, Mr. Museveni will also tell us tomorrow, if he cannot protect the lives and properties of our citizens, including his officials who dismissed intelligence the other day, perhaps they ought to retire. They will just need to resign.
Interesting, Joseph. I want to bring in Doctor, and I want you to just have your take on, of course, how this violence fits into the bigger, this attack fits into the bigger violence in the country, but of course also the role of the community in trying to possibly avert this criminality.
Yeah, you cannot fight violence without involving the community. because even the violent people, these terrorists come from the community. So really the medicine is in the community, but you have to do certain things to win the community. In Uganda now, I talk to young people. In the evening, I go to the football pitch, and as we are doing our football, I put in some of these issues. And they think that the government is cynical. So when you are talking about the thing, they call me manager. They say, but manager, you think this is serious? Those are their things. They're just, maybe they want another budget or something.
Yeah, they mistrust.
They want another budget, or somebody wants some money. So number one,
I find they say that they really trust the government.
So I don't know about that. I'm saying what I know. So the first thing that we need to do is to reduce commercialization of every issue in the country. Of recent, in the few years that we have been in, everybody now comes up with an issue to get money, because it is only when that issue is political that you get some money to your docket or something. I really feel that if commercialization can be reduced, and first of all, government must accept that we have a problem. Because when you listen to government officials right now, they are in denial. They are saying this is just a small thing, supported by their spokesmen like Mwenda. They are dismissing these things. They are saying these are just small things and they will be finished. In fact, yesterday Mwenda was saying that he thinks this is the last nail of defeating, that when the terrorists started blasting themselves, they have been cornered. And I said, Mwenda, are you serious? So we must accept that there is a crisis in the country. I gave you an example of 1945. Only 8 people died. They put in place a commission. That commission had to come up with the report, and some of those things were implemented. And that's why you see the Bataka's power on control of power, of land and what have you, had to be reduced by the government then to make sure that the people agree. So you must create some genuine hope. And that hope is accepting and saying, countrymen, we have a problem. This is a real problem, and we would want everybody to get concerned in this problem. But we have A, B, C, D on how we are going to resolve this problem. But dismissing and giving information which even a small boy at home doubts, says, but can that be true? For example, yesterday I was watching TV and I was shocked. There was a contradictory information on the person who was caught in Katoke. According to Enanga, and these are on record, that's why I'm saying them here, that man was suspected, disabled, and that's how he led them to that place where they discovered even some other bombs. Yesterday they were interviewing people, a TV station.
It's people who called the
that it is people who called the police, that there is a suspicious person here. They went there the previous time, they did not find the man. They have been looking for him for a whole week. So by the time the bombs blast, they had already apprehended the man. They had him. So when people hear such contradictory information coming from national media, it creates some suspicion and people lose hope. So we need to restore people's hope by, first of all, telling them the truth, that there is a problem here, but we are on top of things. Then number 2, allow experts to do their work. There is a lot of political interference in the work of experts. Sometimes, Sarah, why you see Enanga going to announce, when you look at him, he's really not genuine. He is sort of acting, I call him intercooler. You know, Enanga is an intercooler. Something is very serious, but he will pretend there is no problem. And don't worry, there is nothing that is going to happen. So people, when you go to the town there, now people are acting Enanga. In fact, one time they were saying that Enanga said that Lokech is going to resurrect. Do you think he has died? He's going to resurrect. That is the spokesperson of police being cynicized like that. So can we do things in an expert way? For example, these bomb or terrorist-related things, there is some information which should be kept to only experts.
Of course.
And we should allow experts to do their work. For example, a minister should come with evidence from experts, not giving his opinions. And I think the president does the same. I don't want to comment about the president.
Why?
So we should leave the experts to do their work. In this country now, experts have been reduced to only tools to get information, then the politician uses it. And that's why every matter is political. Every matter. There are matters that should not be politicized. In my view, I think the problem right now does not know whether you're NRM, does not know whether you're a NUP, does not know. For example, associating problems like this to people you don't agree with, in my own opinion, creates suspicion in society. You say, these bad elements, these ones, because you don't agree with them. I don't think these bomb attackers belong to parties unless they produce evidence. So we need to look at this as a problem without putting the NRM, without putting the UPC, so that it is a national problem. Because you saw how we defeated this COVID-19. Non-partisan. Everybody accepted. I didn't see any group saying that for us we are this and therefore we don't want what is coming from the president. So right now, government should do whatever it takes to make sure that everybody is on board without accusing anyone unless they have evidence. This business of I'm seated between lawyers. In Uganda these days, before somebody is arrested, is already convicted. And that creates a problem to people. Why should you convict somebody before you try him? So we need to raise hope in people by making sure. Then the last one is the leaders should show the way. All of the leaders should make sure that they show the way. It is very, in my view, I find it very, very bad that you saw when the bomb blasts took place. I saw everybody going to that place. And you wonder, to do what?
Which place?
The scene of crime.
The Security Chiefs.
Yes, to do what? To do what? We should leave that to experts. And then when it comes to communication, it should be the leaders telling people that this is like this is like this, and this is how we are going to do it.
So did they contaminate the scene of crime?
In my view, really, I find it very problematic. I don't know why those people went to that place and they, with the media and they are telecasting, giving BBC free news. Because in other places, they even warn people that the images you are going to see, so that you walk away from the TV when you have problems. In Uganda here, it is just everybody becomes an expert. There is a boda man there also watching and giving his opinion over matters he does not even know. You find a politician is speaking and you really see that this man is not briefed. He's just speaking from... In other words, what I'm trying to say, that leaders should give information from an expert point of view. And if you have not been briefed, keep quiet. Because you mislead the public, and once you mislead the public loses trust in you. Then he has talked about...
And that is clearly not leadership anyway.
He has talked about sensitization. Sensitization cannot be by just people giving pronouncements. I think by now, ever since we were there, the Minister of Defense, or at least Minister of Internal Affairs, should have given a statement. In Uganda here, why are we putting
Who is
all...
the Minister of Defense?
Who?
I think it is Bamulanzechi Sempicha.
It's the Minister of State.
Yeah, that's the
Can you
Minister of
remember?
Defense. That is
But is for Minister
for
of Defense.
state.
For the
Bamulanzechi
And
Sempicha
Bamulanzechi?
is the Minister of Defense.
Full.
Yes.
You don't know
You have
your
not been in
cabinet
your
ministers?
country?
But do they matter?
Is that safe?
No, that's what I'm saying, Sarah. I think
Yeah.
by now, a Minister of Defense with his counterpart, the Minister of Internal Affairs,
yes.
and the Minister of Security should have addressed the nation and given guidelines. Because when we hear from the Minister of Defense, we are hearing from authority, and therefore we shall be guided. By now, there should have been a brief to Parliament on what happened by the same persons. We cannot leave every burden to the President, in my view. The President should only come in to give a final statement when you have already heard from these people. We have not even had any communication from the IGP himself. So Enanga comes, and Enanga, I wish they knew. People now take him as a funny person, unfortunately. So we are demanding that that happens. Of course, the other counterpart in the army has been speaking to the people, but we really feel that the leaders should take the way. Otherwise, politicians are going to use this unfortunate situation and turn it into their political tool and confuse the masses. And once the masses are confused, you can't resolve the problem. Lastly, we need to, and that's where I started from, we need to identify these people and investigate them thoroughly. Not this fire brigade methods. We need to get these people who are doing these things, identify them thoroughly, come up with a scientific report to see how we can resolve these problems. Because we must first of all show that any life lost in Uganda is bad enough. If we are going to allow the country to appreciate people just dying, the other time in November, they shot down about 55 people, and that is official statement, because there are those who are shot in Sunday and other places where they might have not recorded, and nothing is done. We are now 1 year ago. We have not seen any report. We have not seen culprits of those people who, because the government said that those were indisciplined officers. But we want to see those indisciplined officers being punished and being told not to do such a thing. Because there cannot be a country where people in 2 days, you shoot 55 people. Because according to government record, 55 were shot. And there is no report even on what happened. Because, for example,
do we have a report
if it was NUP, in my view, if it was NUP if they have evidence that it was NUP which instigated those things, we should see some leaders of NUP in jail right now, because this is 12 months, isn't it? 12 months, they should be there. She's asking about a report in Kasese. That is a nightmare. You cannot even understand what the people who even did those things in Kasese are now promoted. They are big people in our forces. So, number one, we should tell the public that impunity cannot be allowed. Anybody who participates in impunity, we must show a sign that we'll get this. But if people can walk around, shoot others, kill people, and nothing happens to them, the only thing that you see, for example, I don't think the chiefs of security should have been very comfortable that 55 people have been shot, dead in 2 days. And they are busy in their convoys traveling around as big people. I think we should stop that, so that members of the society get to know that we have people who are protecting us. And if I do such a thing, I have this. But now in Uganda, you can go and kick somebody, he dies, and that is the end of you.
Interesting. I need us to conclude. We've literally summarized that conversation there, and as we go into the conclusion, I possibly would want to start with the Ochieno. Oh, Sarah, let me go there and come back like this. I want us to have just a take of each one of us with 2 minutes on what explains, or what explains the increase in the prices, especially for the fuel, but also that affects the other commodities. And of course, increase in these prices, and when the high cost of expenditure, also a security threat in a way. So we need to know what really explains this in economic terms, but also, as you also react to that, we also need to give a way forward for the general peace of our country as we conclude.
Well, inflation was expected after COVID effects on the economy. Globally, there is a recession. Our economic growth, which was picking up at 2.2%, predicted to be 3.7% in 1 year, is now being affected by rising oil prices. One can argue that we do not have a control on the rising fuel prices because they are determined by the global supply and demand forces. And I would use an example of Kenya. Just recently, when there was a hike in prices of fuel in Kenya, the Treasury intervened to the state and paid the petrol dealers for the differences in rising oil prices on the global market to mitigate the effect on the common man. In our situation, the bureaucrats will tell you that we are in a liberal economy and we are to the mercies of supply and demand forces, and therefore the vagaries of the entrepreneurs at the global market are all impacting on us, people, unabated. I doubt that in our shabby way of handling national matters, we have capacity to intervene. I doubt. This happens at the backdrop of increasing public debt that is above. We are 5% above recommended borrowing levels, and we continue to borrow. I think in just this quarter there had been 2 supplementary budgets for Parliament. We even have a supplementary budget for an expensive and a office for special presidential advisors, and that is also a budget put before our Parliament to borrow money for retired citizens to advise the president, whom they will never meet according to their own confessions. I'm sure several presidential advisors in this country are on record to say that they never meet the president whom they are supposed to advise. And then you wonder, apart from ensuring that there is disposable income in the pockets of some people, and they are able to pick groceries and have free vehicle and fuel at the cost of taxpayer, why are these appointments made? To increase the burden of the taxpayer. Of course, for the regime, it helps them keep their senior cadres in check. It helps prevent them from being needy for those who have not prepared for their old age. But how about the old people? We have a senior citizens grant. So let these senior cadres also go and wait for the 20,000. Is it per month or per year? Yes, so that they are at the same level with the people they plan for when they are in retirement. Because if you say the senior citizens, how often do they receive that 20,000?
Monthly, but it comes
yes.
quarterly.
Okay. So let them also go in their homes and wait for this grant. Why are we bothered with them? We have structures as a country. We celebrate steady progress. Let them go and enjoy the benefits of the decisions they took while in office. Let 20,000 also be enough for them. Why are we struggling to ensure that they live comfortably when they do not plan for the comfort of the taxpayer? So, the rising food prices, the rising fuel, for fuel everybody pays the price. You can avoid buying food whose price has gone outside your disposable income and capacity to consume. But how do you avoid the impact on increasing fuel? Either if you are too poor, you purchase paraffin or kerosene and you use it for lighting in your house, so you are going to pay. If you don't have a car, you use public transport. I think there's a 1,000 addition on public transport, you are going to pay. If you have a car, you are going to pay. Plus the damages of the repairs you incur because of our bad roads. If you are driving a car which is costs not covered by a taxpayer, on a quarterly basis, you pay some good money on maintenance of your car because of the poor roads we drive on. So this is a burden of the taxpayer. It is evidence that bad governance, including those that propagate and support it, will affect all of us without discrimination, and we should all be concerned.
Interesting. I want to get to Ochieno. Yep.
No, very briefly, I think we don't have time. Quite clearly, as Sarah says, oil prices tend to be general and imperative, a global issue. But in Uganda's case, obviously, it is the case that Uganda is the country that taxes oil, fuel at the pump more than any other in the region. The common sense thing that would happen if there was a sensible government would be to cushion the consumer by either making sure that they minimize the tax, in terms of the differences between what is paid in the global market and what people then have to pay for at the pump. Number one. Number two is again another common sense. I don't know where the economists in government, but if they're there, they will not be able to advise this guy anyway. Is the case that whenever you have high fuel prices, it will impact directly on the agricultural products. Just as it will impact on how far much you pay between here and Kamuli, on the taxes, it's going to impact on whether or not the groundnuts that comes from Bushenyi, the true powerful groundnuts, arriving in Kampala, the price, that's basically how it happens. So it affects what the prices are at the market stores and indeed on the shop floor. Just likewise, if there is a shaky value of the shilling versus the dollar, which, as I understand, there's been a warning that our shilling is overvalued. That in itself, in the recent times, is shaky, and it means therefore that perhaps the next month or two is going to be much more unpredictable than actually we might actually perceive. But we generally clearly hope that it's not made worse by the uncertainties about the security uncertainties, because those directly impact on the way our economic trends do. How our economy performs. But generally, Uganda is a sweatshop economy. If it is the case that we produce less and than we consume, it is necessarily going to be the case that the average citizen will suffer. So we hardly sell much abroad, except sending our children to slave markets in Europe. Beyond which the exchange is, we have to buy these expensive things, and the little few dollars that we get out of that, we have to make sure that we feed these guys who for 35 years have fed so much in our monies that include retired NRA generals. So it should really be a shame on them. But for the 1 minute, I really simply say that, well, let's wait and see. But beyond that, while we wait and see whether we're living in poverty or whatever is the case, we need our lives. And we need our lives, and our lives are in the hands of Mr. Museveni. I hope Mr. Museveni is able to wake up at least one time at 3 o'clock in the morning, and between that time, consider that he's got a burden of responsibility for the 45 million Ugandans to make sure that our lives and properties are protected. He caused disorder before. Today and going forward, he should at least make sure that he guarantees genuine security for citizens of this country. And I hope all other citizens take responsibility and will make sure that, yes, everybody else is on protected. And if there's a grievance, let's hope that Museveni allows us and gives us the space in which we're able to discuss our political grievances, or whatever grievance it is, as a much more civil way, rather than one in which we're able to cause havoc to people's lives.
Interesting, Joseph. I need to give a doctor, then Fanda, which will close it for us.
Yeah, I think the economic condition in Uganda is the one which is causing most of the problems that we have, in my view. And it is mainly due to poor planning. In this country, I have evidence that there is very, very poor planning. Because what you say about a country which reads a budget, plans and distributes money to areas of development, then in the next 2 months, they are asking a quarter of the budget as supplementary. You know that there is no good planning. And it is because our budget is so much on consumption. We budget to consume, and consume on what? on administration, mainly administration. We do so little on the production side. And she just talked about something that I've been also wondering. I have been a president, a vice president, or a prime minister. Why should I be given a huge salary after retirement? Until when I die, I was hearing that our vice president was going to be given a new house. He has been not having a house, change the furniture, and give him everything. I feel those are areas we need to look at very carefully.
UPC will put a stop
because
to that.
This is a person who has been in privileges. He has been privileged. Before even he became a politician, he was a senior lawyer in town. And therefore, he must have made a lot of money. He has been in privileges where everything is almost for free. Now, why do you again give him a lot of money? And yet, for me, a teacher, a poor man who is retiring, I don't get my pension. People are dying in one day they are there looking for their pension. So
is the money there?
In my view, I think there is very, very bad planning. Let me just break for you our budget in simple terms. Our budget is slightly above 45 trillion. Now, out of that, 15 is for paying debts. 15 trillion. We collect about 22 trillions, URA and other collections, 22 trillions. So when you remove 15, you remain with 7. Now, that means that for us to run our budget, we have to keep borrowing.
And
borrowing. And we are borrowing. If we were borrowing internally, it would have been good. But we are borrowing externally. So it means that when we get that money, we get it with conditions. And those conditions are a big problem to us. Number two, our economy has been hijacked by the state, in my view. I'm speaking as a scholar. You find that all the businesses she's trying to talk about are managed by people in the state. They are the ones owning the petrol station. Just go to the bureau there and check who owns what. It is the state. So they hide behind liberalization to promote their businesses at the expense of the people. Because in Tanzania, Republic of Tanzania, in 2011, when we had that global problem in Uganda, in the world, in Tanzania, they managed to control the prices of fuel. And I remember one company called BP rejected the demands of government, because government put a price, said with this crisis, we are not going to tolerate any price beyond this.
Price hikes, yes.
We stop here, because that's the role of government.
That's correct.
That's the role of government. Whether you are liberal, what, I don't understand. In Uganda here, the people who are going to make a decision are in government. Do you expect them to make a decision against themselves? For example, look at the proprietors of schools in Uganda. Just go and check. Some of them are in Ministry of Education itself. So we want the state has captured the economy. So that must reduce. In my view, you need government control. Government must come in and control. Should leave this hiding behind the liberal argument that you see we are in forces of demand and supply. Then why is there government? Why is there government? Then leave us to go laissez-faire, so that I can also go when I'm hungry, I enter a restaurant, eat, and go away. Because it is demand and supply. I'm hungry, that is demand. Of course, they will say the demand must be.
Because I have to bring in...
lastly, we need to involve everybody in the economy. The economy, there must be a deliberate action to involve everybody in the economy, from the lowest person to the highest person in that strata, and make sure that everybody sees that I'm benefiting. This business of handout that this group can reach. What about those ones who cannot reach? You have seen how there have been a convoy of vehicles going to Gulu. And why are they going? They are going to get money from...
Are they going to heaven?
I don't know. They were going to get money, according to the media reports. They were going to get money from a provider of money who is a boss of Operation Wealth Creation, Salim Saleh. This is known to everybody. So what about me who cannot reach there? We need to involve people in real activities that can put everybody to the advantage of benefiting in the economy, then they can be able to buy fuel at any price at a time. So we need to involve everybody.
Thank you.
That's one information for which to respond to. As the doctor was talking, I remembered, and it's important for the listeners to know that the former president of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, is on trial for having promoted state capture under his presidency. So when we say that the state is owning the economy, it is state capture. And the president in Africa is on trial for having promoted
of the most powerful country.
State capture.
Yeah, let's give.
Thank you so much for making me laugh, because you surely know I will summarize it.
yeah. Especially for you.
But first, I want to make a clarification on the misuse or use of money to past leaders. I think Sarah's misuse is different from Professor's misuse. Sarah is saying, you have already a former vice president or a prime minister. You again create him a post of presidential advisor and you give him more money. You are talking of, or impliedly, you're talking of a holder of a office of a former vice president. Now, there are two monies in this dimension. There's an act of parliament called Emoluments of President, Vice President, and Prime Minister Act. That law provides that now that secondary has left, that is where the house you're talking comes from. It provides the rights of these former leaders. Now, secondary goes, you have a right to this. You have a right to this, including electricity. It is put in currency.
We shall
points.
repeal. You
Every month you have 400 say, currency points. Every currency point is 20,000. What are these currency points? What I find it confusing though is if this person has a right under this act and you have given him another appointment with other money, I find it contradictory because the other money under the other law is enough.
It's double money.
It's enough because you get a house, you get a car, you get electricity in currency points, you get water in currency points, you have a PPS, you have a security, you have a cook, you have all this. Now you have that under the act, under an act of parliament. Now the other money, sorry, say again you have the same person is a president. So is he going to withdraw both, or is going to? I think that I have raised that, and that needs to be addressed.
I think so.
The money under the law is enough to keep Uganda till death. The money under an act of parliament is enough to keep the vice president till death. Even his wife, because it
now we have two former prime ministers.
Now, it provides. So I am not sure now what they are hoping to get, whether for a presidential advisor or the other one provided under the act. I thought I needed to
and they are drawing two benefits from.
But for my summary on the two issues of price is that one, we agree that the price is international. So I hope people want to go out and say it is NRM, not NRM. Two, on the issue of security, I like to say to support what my congressman alluded to about National Security Council. Article 219 of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda provides for an institution called National Security Council. This has not been constituted. I was appointed, remember, but it never took up because the appointed members are supposed to go to Parliament for vetting, and once vetted, then it acts. So the framers of the Constitution knew the importance. Most national security matters in UK, in America, that is the highest security body in the country. And you would wish to say it brings aspects of various people. I think that is what he was alluding to. So I would imagine that because the act provides that, I mean, the article provides for the National Security Council, and it goes ahead that Parliament actually passed a law called the National Security Council Act. That act needs to be operationalized with the Constitution because it is only that body that gives guidance on the national security.
Instead of the High Command.
Short of that, you move on an ad hoc basis. So I like to agree with the congressman that maybe now, not maybe, surely now, we need to invoke the constitutional provision. Good enough, there's an act or parliament that operationalizes that provision. I think that is one big ingredient that would support the security situation.
Thank you very
Have I
much.
summarized enough?
You've summarized. You've done it. Thank you very much, Awich. Thank you very much, Joseph. Thank you very much, Dr. Robert and Sarah, for always and all the time, of course, honoring our invitation and always being with us here at Civic Space TV and informing the public. Very important. And of course, I think all the viewers out there who are always following this conversation, we thank you very much for being part of this conversation. Of course, the president is speaking tomorrow, and we know that they will have something. Maybe he will guide us on how to go about the situation that is happening. But of course, to us, the citizens, of course, we have to be vigilant, look out for those areas, and of course, the people that are really looking funny, and we see to it that we can keep ourselves as safe as possible. Let's keep this conversation going. Let's keep safe as countrymen, but of course, importantly, is to send again our sincere condolences to the families that were affected, and of course, the prayers to those that are in the hospitals, and we ask for quick recovery. This is our country. May God bless Uganda. See you next week.